All right, so let's dive into the Charlotte real estate market using the November 2024 Canopy MLS data.
Okay, sounds good.
What are some of the things that are standing out to you from this latest data?
Well, I think one of the most interesting takeaways for me is just how resilient the market is.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, even with the interest rate fluctuations we've seen, sales are still up 4.5% year over year.
Hmm. Yeah, that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and that's a total of 3,140 homes sold just last month, which is a pretty clear sign that buyers are still really active.
That's a lot of homes.
It is.
So even though rates aren't exactly the most favorable, people are still really eager to buy in Charlotte.
Yeah, they really are.
Have we been seeing this trend for a while now?
Yeah, we have. There was a bit of a dip from October to November,
Okay.
but that's pretty typical for this time of year.
Right. Makes sense.
But actually, what's even more interesting to me is the jump in pending contracts.
Oh, okay. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we saw a 22.5% year-over-year increase, which means that 3,194 homes went under contract.
Okay, so that's a pretty big increase. What do you think is driving that surge in buyer activity?
Well, remember back in late September when mortgage rates dipped a bit?
Yeah.
I think that really acted as a catalyst and brought a lot of those buyers who were kind of sitting on the fence back into the market.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we've got all these buyers out there looking for homes. Are there any particular areas in Charlotte that are really hot right now?
Oh, definitely. Matthews and Concord are really seeing a lot of action.
Okay.
They're averaging 5.3 showings per listing, which is a pretty good indicator of high demand.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Huntersville and Kannapolis are also attracting a lot of attention with 4.8 and 4.7 showings per listing, respectively.
So those are all good areas to keep an eye on if you're thinking about buying in Charlotte.
Definitely.
Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about inventory. It's been a hot topic for a while now.
Right.
What's the latest on that front?
Well, there's actually some good news there. Inventory is up significantly compared to last year.
Okay, that's what we like to hear.
Yeah, we're looking at a 28.7% increase, which brings us to a total of 9,176 homes for sale.
That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, and this translates to about a 2.6-month supply, which is definitely moving us closer to a healthier market equilibrium compared to the really tight inventory we were seeing before.
So things are moving in the right direction, but are we fully out of the woods yet when it comes to inventory?
Not completely. While the increase is definitely encouraging, 2.6 months of supply is still below what's considered a balanced market.
Right.
So buyers are still likely to face some competition out there.
Okay, so it's still a bit of a seller's market then.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about prices. Are we seeing any big changes there?
Well, we're seeing some moderate price increases, which I think indicates some stability, but also a slight upward trend.
Okay.
The median sales price is now at $392,000, which is a 3.7% rise.
Okay.
And the average sales price is sitting at $487,445, reflecting an 8.3% increase.
Interesting.
And even the average list price is up 7.7%, reaching $500,100.
Wow, so those list prices are really climbing.
They are.
What do you think that tells us about how sellers are feeling in the current market?
Well, I think it definitely suggests that sellers are feeling pretty confident.
Yeah.
They're anticipating that demand is going to continue to be strong, and they're pricing their homes accordingly.
Makes sense. So we've got a good sense of the overall trends in Charlotte, but let's zoom in a bit. What's happening specifically in Mecklenburg County?
All right, so in Mecklenburg County, we're seeing a similar story, but with a few nuances.
Okay.
Sales are up by a solid 8.4% year over year, with 11,126 homes sold in November.
Got it.
However, the supply situation is still pretty tight at 2.2 months. And that's even with a 37.5% increase in inventory compared to last year.
So it sounds like certain pockets within the county might be even more competitive than others.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's take this one step further and focus on the heart of it all. What's happening in Charlotte City itself?
All right, so Charlotte City is kind of mirroring some of those trends, but it's got its own dynamics too.
Okay.
Sales are up by a pretty significant 13.3% year over year,
Wow.
totaling 918 homes sold in November. Pending contracts are also up 14.5%, with 916 homes going under contract. Inventory has expanded by 27.7%, resulting in 2,254 homes for sale. This translates to 2.2 months of supply, which, as we discussed before, suggests it's still a pretty competitive landscape.
So even with some signs of things easing up, the Charlotte City market is still really hot.
It is.
What about prices within the city limits? What are we seeing there?
We're seeing continued upward movement in both median and average sales prices within the city.
Okay.
The median sales price climbed 6.1% to $424,274,
Okay.
while the average sales price rose 9.8% to $574,856 status.
So that upward price pressure is definitely still there.
It is.
But are there any signs at all that the market might be starting to cool down or shift toward a more balanced state?
Well, one indicator that we might be seeing a bit of a shift is the average number of days a home spends on the market.
Okay, tell me more about that.
In Charlotte City, we've seen a pretty significant increase of 42.9% compared to last year.
Wow.
So homes are now staying on the market for an average of 40 days compared to 28 days last November.
That's a big jump.
It is.
Do you think that's something we should be paying close attention to as a potential sign of things to come?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a data point worth watching.
Okay, so we've really covered a lot of ground here, and I
Yeah.
think we've got a pretty good grasp of the current state of the Charlotte real estate market.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture? What are the experts predicting for 2025?
Well, Charisma Sutherland, the 2024 president of the Canopy Realtor Association, has actually expressed a pretty optimistic outlook for the coming year.
Okay.
She's predicting that mortgage rates will stabilize in 2025,
Okay.
which she believes will lead to a continued strong market in Charlotte.
Well, that's encouraging.
Yeah, her optimism is based on a number of factors, including the city's strong job growth, growing population, and relative affordability compared to other major metropolitan areas.
Right. All really positive factors.
Yeah. And, in fact, the Charlotte MSA ranks second on the National Association of Realtors list of top 10 housing hotspots for 2025.
Well, okay.
Yeah. So it seems like even with some of those economic headwinds we're seeing nationally, Charlotte's real estate market is holding its own.
Yeah, and maybe even thriving.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see how things like inventory, interest rates, and buyer demand play out over the next few months.
For sure.
It really is going to be fascinating to see how those factors interact and shape the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned that the Charlotte MSA ranks really high on that list of housing hotspots for 2025.
Right.
What's driving that prediction? Is it just based on, the current market trends, or are there other things at play?
It's a combination of factors, really. I mean, obviously, the current momentum in the market is a big part of it.
Right.
But they're also looking at those underlying economic and demographic trends that are probably going to contribute to continued growth.
Okay, so tell me more about those trends. What are some of the key drivers that are making Charlotte such an attractive real estate market?
Well, one of the biggest drivers is definitely job growth. Charlotte's got a really thriving economy
Right.
with a lot of different industries, which attracts people from all over.
Yeah, makes sense.
And of course, all those new residents, they need housing.
Right, so it's not just people who want to live in Charlotte, it's people who are moving here for work too.
Yeah, exactly.
And then along with job growth comes population growth.
Right.
Charlotte's population has been steadily increasing for years now.
It has, and that trend's expected to continue.
Yeah.
And more people means more demand for housing,
Right.
which puts upward pressure on prices.
So it's kind of a self-reinforcing cycle.
It is.
Economic growth attracts more people, which then fuels the economy and the housing market even more.
Exactly. And there's another piece of this puzzle that I think sometimes gets overlooked.
Okay, what's that?
Charlotte's relative affordability.
That's interesting because we've been talking about affordability challenges in Charlotte.
Right.
So how does that square with the city being seen as relatively affordable?
Well, it's all about perspective.
Right.
Charlotte might not be as affordable as it was, 10 years ago or something,
Right.
but it's still considered a more accessible market than other major metros,
Okay.
like New York, San Francisco, even Atlanta.
Yeah, I guess for people who are priced out of those really expensive markets,
Right.
Charlotte seems like a much more attainable option.
Exactly. And you combine that affordability factor with the strong job market and, just the overall appeal of Charlotte.
Right.
It's a big draw.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got this interesting dynamic where Charlotte's facing its own affordability issues,
Right.
but it's still seen as relatively affordable on a national scale,
Right.
which makes it even more attractive.
It does.
Okay, now let's circle back to inventory for a minute. We've seen some improvement,
Yeah,
but supply is still pretty tight.
it is.
What does that mean for buyers and sellers?
Well, for buyers, it means they need to be prepared to compete.
Okay,
In a low inventory market, multiple offers are common.
right.
Buyers may need to be flexible with their terms or even, offer above asking price to get a property.
So it's not really a buyer's market.
Not in the traditional sense, no.
Right.
I mean, it's more of a balanced market, but it does still slightly favor sellers.
Right.
But like we said, there are signs that things are moving towards a more balanced state.
Right. Those days on market are increasing.
Right.
And for sellers, what are some of the things they should keep in mind in this type of environment?
Well, I think it's important for sellers to remember that even though they might have some leverage,
Okay.
in a low inventory market, it's still really important to price their homes strategically.
Okay, so it's not a free-for-all. They still need to pay attention to what's happening in the market.
Exactly. They need to find a good balance between maximizing their return, but also making sure that their home is appealing to buyers,
Right.
in this kind of competitive market.
Okay, so we've talked about overall market trends.
Right.
The things that are driving Charlotte's popularity and what all of this means for buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle that I want to explore.
Okay.
What about new construction?
Right.
How is that impacting the Charlotte market?
Oh, definitely. New construction is a factor.
Okay.
Charlotte has seen a surge in new development in recent years.
Yeah.
And I think that's likely to continue.
Right, with demand being so high.
Yeah, with demand being so strong.
Is that new construction helping to kind of ease that inventory shortage at all?
Well, it's contributing to some extent.
Okay.
New builds are adding to the overall housing stock.
Right.
But they haven't really been able to fully offset the demand.
Yeah, and there's another aspect to new construction too.
Okay, what's that?
It's not just about, adding units.
Right.
It can also impact pricing, and buyer preferences.
Okay, so how is new construction affecting the pricing dynamics?
Well, new builds, they usually come with a higher price tag
Right.
than existing homes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's partly because of, construction costs going up.
Right.
But also new builds usually have, all the modern features and amenities that buyers are looking for.
Right. So they're pushing that price ceiling up a bit, even if they're not directly competing with every segment of the market.
Exactly. And that's where buyer preferences come in.
Okay.
Some buyers, they really specifically want new construction.
Yeah.
Because of the modern designs and, the latest technology and everything's brand new.
Right. They're willing to pay a premium for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So new construction is kind of catering to a specific niche within the market.
It is. And that niche is willing to pay more for what they want.
Right. And what's interesting is that this can actually create a ripple effect in the broader market.
Oh, how so?
Well, as buyers, are drawn to those new builds,
Right.
it can actually ease some of that competition for existing homes.
Okay, so it kind of frees up sort of inventory for other buyers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's not just about the numbers. It's also about, the nuances of what buyers are looking for and how that interacts with, different parts of the market.
Right. Those preferences can really drive those market dynamics.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about the potential for the market to shift toward a more balanced state.
Okay.
What are some of those key indicators that buyers and sellers should be watching for?
Okay, well, one of the most important indicators is the days on market metric we talked about.
Right.
If we see, that average time it takes to sell a home keep going up, that could mean that demand is softening a bit and, we're moving toward more balanced market.
So definitely something to keep an eye on. What else should we be looking at?
Well, another key indicator is inventory levels.
Okay.
If we start to see a really substantial increase in inventory,
Yeah.
particularly in, those hot areas we talked about,
Right.
that could suggest that, the market's starting to shift away from that, strong seller's market.
Okay, so days on market and inventory levels, those are the key things to watch.
Hmm.
Now, let's say the market does shift to a more balanced state.
Okay.
What would that actually mean for buyers and sellers?
Okay, well, for buyers, a more balanced market means they've got more options
Right.
and less pressure, to rush into decisions.
Right. They can take their time.
Exactly. They might have more time to, look at different properties and negotiate on price and even include contingencies in their offers.
Right.
It's a more buyer-friendly environment.
Yeah, so less of a frenzy and more opportunity to, really think things through carefully. So, and for sellers, what does this mean for them?
Well, for sellers, it means they're going to need to be more strategic about how they price their home
Okay.
and how they present it.
So it's not just about listing it and waiting for the offers to roll in.
Right, exactly. Homes that are overpriced or not well maintained, they're probably going to sit on the market longer.
Right.
Whereas, homes that are priced competitively and, show well are going to attract more buyers.
So it's a shift from, where anything sells to really having to put in some effort to stand out.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a really insightful look into the Charlotte real estate market. We've learned about current trends, what's driving demand, and what experts are predicting for the future.
Yeah.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
As we head into 2025
Mm.
and the market shows signs of strength, but also some potential changes,
Right.
what are some of the strategies that buyers and sellers can use to navigate this evolving landscape?
That's a great question. And it really comes down to staying informed, being adaptable, and making good decisions based on their own circumstances.
That's great advice.
Hmm.
Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive. And to our listeners, we hope this information helps you make smart decisions as you navigate the Charlotte real estate market in the coming year. Good luck on your real estate journey.